Thank you very much for coming on today, Brett. I really do appreciate it. It's as I said when I invited you, that we've got some really tumultuous times provincially in the political scene and
Hmm.
such, and a lot of strong views and opinions, including from out of here. And, a lot of people, when it comes to the leadership review with Jason Kenney, well, they're beating on him pretty hard. They have been for the last couple of years. And I wanted to see some balance. And you've come out and been very supportive of Premier Kenney in this review, and you've come out with something of an endorsement for him.
Yeah, I'm very much aligned with him. I have business interests in Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. So I'm actively engaged and have been in the world of COVID, which has been probably the highlight of the challenges that we've all been facing for the last couple of years. And it's been call it the lightning rod for leadership. And I watched the outcomes, and what's been happening in Ontario, a disaster. Saskatchewan, in line with Alberta, and you've seen both Scott Moe and Jason Kenney move very much in lockstep with mandates and passports and vaccination protocols and all those things. They've moved in line, and BC has been an unmitigated disaster. And again, I own a gym, I own restaurants, I own activities in various places, and in Calgary, and pardon me, Alberta has stood head and shoulders above. Have we done things perfectly? No. And part of my frustration is that the medical community is divided. And so if you get professionals who say masks don't work and professionals who say you need masks for all ages at all times, then they say mandates don't work, that the passports are meaningless. All of these things become interesting when the medical community, who are the thought leaders that we should be able to rely on, are completely divided. And they're not divided in a small range, they're divided to extremes. You watch Joe Vipond, who is obviously carrying an NDP card, ranting and crapping all over every decision that was made. And yet Alberta is bleeding edge in terms of the COVID response for Canada. So who gets the benefit of that? Well, Albertans. Who gets the blame? Kenney. And this is my frustration. The extreme right and the extreme left have crapped all over our leadership, in particular Kenney. I don't see a viable alternative to Kenney, but ignore that. I happen to like the man not just on a relative basis, but on an absolute basis. As we pivoted and navigated through COVID, I was in trouble. In March of 2020, I'm a lender, I'm a borrower, I'm a landlord, I'm a tenant, and it looked like I was screwed on every level. Over the next couple of months, we renegotiated with banks, we renegotiated with borrowers, we renegotiated with landlords, and we solved our problems. But I got to tell you, I was frustrated and scared at a point in time. And so now we've got people continuously dumping on Kenney in particular, claiming every decision he made was wrong. And yet the reality is, when you look at our economic recovery, which is spectacular and highly anticipated, we all knew that the price of oil would recover when COVID fell behind. The impacts of COVID on supply and demand were obvious, and we all thought that COVID would disappear in a year. It took 2 years. But the recovery, the global recovery of the oil industry is spectacular, and Alberta's participation in that, because we were ready, is also spectacular. So to blame our leader for the challenges of COVID is wrong. The division within the party is goofy. I see some of the stupidest commentary. All due respect, I know you guys, and certainly the news, Rebel News, talks about the pastor that got arrested. Well, there's 10,000 pastors and preachers in Alberta. Only two couldn't accommodate working with the system. And those two get all the profile, not the other 9,998 who accommodated. So I struggle with the extremes getting all the noise. And the extremes with that noise have undermined the party. And I wouldn't doubt for a moment that the NDP have signed up in spades so that they could vote at this upcoming election, because they're terrified that the reality of a recovering economy in Alberta will solidify the UCP for the future. There's my rant. I can continue, but I'll let you take it wherever you want.
No problem. No, and the economic recovery is certainly going to help. I mean, people feel more comfortable as they're going forward. Something you brought up, though, was it was Premier Moe in Saskatchewan. As you said, he's been doing well out there as well. And his policies, when it came to restrictions and such, very much paralleled Premier Kenney's. But Scott Moe isn't dealing with such internal division and these kinds of problems like Jason Kenney is. I mean, I'm certain he's got activist doctors in Saskatchewan like Vipond out here and others who have been on his case, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't
Oh
seem
no.
to have stuck to Mo so strongly as it does with Jason Kenney. Why is he having such a difficulty maintaining unity, you think?
Well, that is an interesting parallel because they have run very much in lockstep, and Saskatchewan has celebrated what they've accomplished. They've punched down, if you will. I think the problem is twofold. One is our medical community was divided, and I blame our medical community, the incompetence of some of the leadership in our medical community. And that's, I mean, it's just, I'm not going to name names because it doesn't matter. But if they can't agree, then how can the politicians who have to rely on input? I mean, it's just like economists and business people provide input to the government, and hopefully they respond in a thoughtful way with budgets that accommodate, with royalty systems, tax systems that make sense. But here we are relying entirely upon the medical community, and it can't agree. And even today, you can find a wide disparity of opinions on whether masks work, on whether vaccines work, on whether COVID has any impact on your life or not. You get a wide disparity, and that's the blame that has been dumped on. And that's, I think, so the medical community and the NDP or the left or the woke have captured the flag on waving a flag very inappropriately that says this is all Kenney's fault, and blaming someone who's actually in the driver's seat, who's actually navigated and steered through. I mean, one mistake Kenney made clearly was last July when he announced that Alberta was open for business. I own restaurants here. We were spectacularly delighted, and it went well. It went extremely well. Kenney's mistake that day, though, was he didn't say, we're open until the next variant comes and hits us. And there we were 3 months later with a variant. So he opened and thought we'd be open for good. We all did. We all hoped that. But of course, the moment the variant came, they blamed Kenney for incompetence. Well, no, we adapted, we adjusted. Here we are. And by the way, the fact that Calgary today is 30% empty in terms of downtown, that's too bad because most of the buildings are owned by guys in Toronto. Too bad, so sad. The underlying economy in this province, in this city, is absolutely rocking. And I know that as we're struggling to hire people in all of our businesses. Why are we struggling? Because they're overloaded with opportunity. And that to me is where a province should be celebrating, not dividing.
So, I mean, just getting into some more speculation. I mean, I think what all conservatives can agree on is the most horrific outcome we could have is having to say Premier Notley for 4 more years. We just don't
Oh,
want to end up there again.
that'd be
Uh,
the end of our province. It would
yeah.
truly be the end. If the Alberta economy aligned through the NDP with what's happening at the federal level, it's the end of our economy. This nonsense about having only EVs by 2035. We can't power the EVs. We don't have enough charging system infrastructure, let alone the transmission lines to power them. The stupidity of what's happening right now on a national level. And if it was mirrored at a provincial level, wow. And that's where I am worried. I mean, just ranting a bit, I don't see either Brian Jean or Danielle Smith providing leadership that's significantly different in terms of taking Alberta and moving our economy forward. Period. It's just, I like them both. They're good people, but I like where Kenney's at right now.
So, I mean, a big challenge Premier Kenney is going to face after this mail-in vote now and the review, assuming he wins it, say with a decent number of 65%, but that's still not going to be
Yeah.
enough to really solidify the Hornets underneath them. What do you think he's going to have to do though to consolidate? Because I mean, there's going to be there's a lot of people who've crossed the line of no return within his caucus. There's definitely going to be a divided house, and it just looks so frighteningly similar to what we saw prior to when Rachel Notley won in the past. He's going to
No,
have his
very
work
much.
cut for him.
No, the shame is on the UCP membership. The shame is on many of the individuals who seek to divide the party. Some of the stuff that's been put up publicly should be discussed privately. Whether it's a family or a business or a political system, there's a lot of this stuff that just has no reason to be in the public domain. And I think some serious mistakes have been made by some of the members, and several have reached out to me saying, how can you possibly support Kenney when he says this and does this? And I'm like, well, yeah, but he said it and he did it. By the way, Jason Kenney is still the only politician in Canada that answers questions. The rest of them all have speaking notes. You ask Justin Trudeau, is today Monday? And he'll talk about the stars and the clouds and the alignment with the planets. He has no concept of what it means to actually answer a question thoughtfully. Kenney has and does. And the fact that we rake him over the coals for being honest as a leader, I'm struggling with that at all as well. So the party is divided. There's a group in the right that has gone extreme, and people are pressing me continuously to be more involved with the true separatist movements. I actually like Kenney's approach on equalization and therefore separation, which is we need a better deal. And if we had a fair deal, a better deal is what it takes to get to a fair deal. But if we had a fair deal in equalization and therefore confederation, many of our problems would be ameliorated. It's that simple.
Yeah, well, those two
And so I,
words, like that's one of the areas where I've been frustrated with Premier Kenney. Was I was very optimistic. I was thrilled when he got elected, and with the Fair Deal panel and the goals that it set out. I mean, going out as you
Mhm.
said, listening and talking, but they really dragged their feet on all the recommendations. I'm just wondering maybe if getting out of the gate after this leadership, if we could see some solid action on some of the items that came up with all of that consultation, with all that time with Albertans. Perhaps if we saw a premier willing to take a stronger stance with Ottawa, not necessarily independence, but some of the people like me might be more comfortable seeing him going forward.
Well, and it's a good point you make. The equalization referendum was somewhere between amusing and confusing. The question was crystal clear, and yet I still have people challenge me that the question didn't make sense. Well, I had no problem with it, and I'm not smarter than the average, but I'm not dumber than the average. We could read the question. The fact that only, what was it, 65, 70% of Albertans said, yes, we would like a fair deal in equalization is stunning. And the stunning part is the 30% that said, no, we're happy with where we're at. That 30% doesn't think. It's absolutely one of the stupidest. I mean, the fact that we weren't at 90+% is stunning. And I just don't understand that at all. But going back to your point, Kenney has always said that he would do the equalization referendum out at the timing that he did. So when he took office, he told a group of business leaders, I was there, he said it publicly, he said it privately. He was continuously clear that he would do the equalization referendum in due course, a couple of years into his mandate. And no one expected COVID. Nobody. We know that. Nobody expected COVID, maybe except for a lab in Wuhan. But the bottom line is nobody expected that. So the point was that Kenney moved out equalization as a referendum for a couple of years to give him time to solidify the province and set it up for the future. Then the opportunity comes for him to go back to Ottawa and say, look, I have a mandate. It's 70%, 65, 90, whatever it should have been, could have been. But now I truly do expect. I mean, there's Quebec saying we don't feel like equalizing the number of people that are in Parliament. We're special. We don't care. Quebec doesn't care about pipelines. Doesn't want the fossil fuel industry to exist. So we need to be able to go back and slap, spank, and push Quebec in particular, but the feds as a group in terms of Canada's perspective on Alberta and Saskatchewan as to their role in confederation. If we can't get a fair deal, I then shift further to the right in terms of the separation movement that says we need a better deal and we're not going to get it staying in confederation. But I do believe Kenney's the right leader at the right time for this province. That's why I stay where I am.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, the main question, I guess, is going to be post leadership. Who is most likely to stave off the potential of an NDP government, and that's the case that Premier Kenney would have to make to everybody, I think, to keep things from getting too divided. I mean, I do believe a lot of people who are frustrated with him for whatever reason it may be. He opened up too early. He opened up too late. All of those things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good chance they would unify just to say, well, I'm annoyed with him, but darn it, we can't have a repeat of the election back that put Notley in power. But
Well, and that's where it goes back to your earlier point, which is there's subterfuge and there's subdivision occurring within the party at the grassroots level. Once we get past this leadership review, my hope is that the economic results, what we're doing in terms of activity, employment, all of the things that personify a great Alberta, will be attributed in some small way to the existing leadership.
yeah, well, and one of our greatest, I think, gifts as conservatives and our greatest flaws is that we speak for ourselves and we're individualists. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fantastic trait, but it makes it increasingly difficult to manage a party. I mean, the left will close ranks even if their leader has done something to upset them and they'll deal with it inside. Conservatives, well, we're going to pull out the pitchforks as we saw federally twice now and we're seeing
Yeah.
provincially, which isn't the most productive way to go. I mean, but still at the same time, you don't want to silently take something if you don't see it. So, I'm just hoping. I think a lot of Premier Kenney's challenges too, though, have come with internal management and dealing with his own
Mhm.
caucus, and that's going to be up to him to try and soothe those things, assuming he gets past this review. I guess time will tell.
Oh, there's been people issues. We all know that in terms of moving his cabinet around, but none of those are unique to Alberta. Cabinets are shifted and rolled. I mean, you watch what's going on in Ontario, and I just roll my eyes at how can the Conservative movement in Ontario support the hypocrisy and the range of outcomes that occur within the Conservative Party? Well, then you got the Liberal Party federally, and again, we'll avoid that rant.
That's a separate show. Well,
That's a separate week.
yeah, we've covered a lot of what I wanted to do today, and I really appreciate it.
Thank
Like I
you.
said, what I do want to see, I mean, I've got my own bias, so that's why I got an opinion show. But
Yep.
I like to see a balance of guests and opinions. And to be honest, it's been hard to find people of profile speaking on behalf of Premier Kenney, and we need to have that if people are going to make an informed choice when they make their membership vote. So I appreciate you coming on and speaking from that perspective today.
Well, and that's where I appreciated the opportunity because certainly I watch your work. I enjoy your work. Sometimes you're a little further right than I am in my thinking. But again, we're in the same province. And if we can't have a thoughtful conversation as we're doing right now, what's the point?
Well, that's it. We don't have to agree. We just have to have respect. And we've been lacking a whole lot
Absolutely.
of that lately.
I agree.
All right. Well, thanks again, Brett. Always good to talk to you. And I hope we get the chance again soon. Maybe we'll start dissecting the post leadership thing down the road here.
Well, I'd be happy to chat about the federal, the parties, the participants running for leadership of the federal party as well. I am terrified of a couple of the members that are running. Anyway,
Well,
that's another day.
yeah, absolutely. I've been interviewing a number of them. I've interviewed 5 so far. And yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts I could share on what I've concluded. I want to get some more of those interviews in the bag before
Yep,
I kind of really go into it. But yeah, we're not seeing some real great shining lights overall out there, though Poilievre looks interesting for sure.
I'm with you.
All right. Well, thanks again. And we will talk again later.
All right. Thanks for your time.